Welcome to the Stoic Storyteller, your sanctuary for raw, unfiltered stories about the darker side of human nature. Here, we dive deep into the reality of life, the toxic relationships, the bitter betrayals, and the quiet, calculating art of absolute justice.
My wife drugged me, used my gun, and told police I murdered her billionaire lover. But a hidden recorder captured the truth. I stayed silent until every killer entered the same room, and then I played the night they thought they had erased. The call came at 2:17 in the morning, 27 minutes after I woke on the floor of my own garage with blood on my cuff and no memory of driving home. My phone vibrated against the concrete beside my hand. "Mr. Cole," a woman said when I answered. Her voice was level, practiced, and awake in a way no honest person should be at that hour. "This is Detective. I need you to stay where you are." I looked at the closed garage door. Rain tapped on the metal panels. "Why?" "Because officers are outside your house." Blue light slipped beneath the door before she finished the sentence. I sat up slowly. My head felt packed with wet sand. I was still wearing the charcoal suit I had put on for dinner with. The knot of my tie hung beneath one ear. There was a dark smear across my right sleeve. When I touched it, the blood had already dried. "What happened?" Detective paused. Adrian Vale was found dead in his penthouse. The name should have shocked me. Instead, it settled into place like the last piece of a puzzle I had refused to see. Adrian was the chief executive officer of Orison Dynamics, the company that had turned private data into public power. He was also the man my wife had been sleeping with for at least 8 months. I had learned about the affair 6 days earlier. Believed I had learned about it that night. That difference mattered. "What does that have to do with me?" I asked. Another pause. "Your licensed handgun was recovered beside the body." I reached for the small biometric safe mounted beneath my workbench. The door stood open. The foam cradle inside was empty. My pulse stayed slow, but something colder moved behind it. "I'm unarmed." "We know. Where is my wife?" "We were hoping you could tell us." The garage door shook as someone knocked from the other side. Mr. Cole said, "Put both hands where the officers can see them. Do not make any sudden movements." I pressed the wall switch. The door rose, revealing 4 uniformed officers in the rain. Their weapons were drawn. Behind them stood a dark-haired detective in a navy coat, one hand holding a phone to her ear. Looked at me through the opening. Her eyes went first to my hands, then to the blood. I stepped into the driveway with my palms raised. One officer forced me to my knees. Another locked metal around my wrists. A third read words I had heard hundreds of times in training videos and evidence depositions. Words designed to make a person feel that the rest of his life had already been decided. Ended the call and came closer. "Do you know how the blood got on your sleeve?" "No." "Do you remember being at Mr. Vale's penthouse?" "Yes." Every officer around us became still. I saw again as she had appeared at 9:30 that evening, standing in the doorway of our house after 3 nights away. Her cream coat was wet from the rain. She looked exhausted, frightened, almost sincere. "I need to tell you everything," she had said. "Not here." She had driven us downtown in her car. She said Adrian had documents proving he had used her. She said he planned to destroy both of us. She asked me to come upstairs because she was afraid to face him alone. I remembered entering the penthouse. I remembered Adrian pouring whiskey he did not drink. I remembered touching my wrist as though we were still married. Then nothing. "I was there," I told, "but I don't remember leaving." She studied me for several seconds. "Were you angry with Mr. Vale?" "Yes." "Did you threaten him?" "No." "Did you know your wife had a relationship with him?" "Yes." That answer surprised her. "Since when?" "Long enough to understand that this is not what it looks like." Glanced at the blood on my cuff. "Then tell me what it is." A black sedan stopped at the end of the driveway. The rear door opened. Stepped out beneath an officer's umbrella. Her face was pale. Her hair was damp. She wore the same cream coat, but now there was a tear in the left sleeve. She saw me kneeling in the rain and pressed one hand to her mouth. For an instant, she looked like a frightened wife. Then I noticed what was missing. There were no tears. She walked toward Detective and pointed at me with a shaking hand. "He killed Adrian," she whispered. The officers tightened their grip on my arms, looked directly into my eyes, and I understood that the murder had not ruined her plan. The murder was the plan. They placed me in an interview room at 3:06 a.m. and left me alone beneath a fluorescent light that hummed like an insect trapped behind glass. My wrists were bruised from the cuffs. A paper cup of water sat untouched in front of me. On the other side of the mirrored wall, someone was watching to see whether I prayed, panicked, or rehearsed a lie. I did none of those things. I rebuilt the evening. At 9:14, had texted me for the first time in 3 days. I made a terrible mistake. Adrian is dangerous, please let me explain. At 9:31, she arrived at our house. At 9:58, we entered Vale Tower through the private garage. At 10:06, Adrian opened the penthouse door. Everything after 10:19 was missing. That was the point when he poured me a drink. Adrian's penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of Vale Tower. I knew the layout better than he did because my firm, Security, had rebuilt its surveillance network after a kidnapping threat 2 years earlier. Adrian had insisted on a system he could control personally. I told him no security system should answer to the ego of one man. He told me every system answered to whoever paid for it. I gave him the controls he wanted. I also installed what he did not ask for, a passive integrity recorder hidden behind the west wall of his study. It did not stream video. It did not connect to the building network. It existed for one purpose: to preserve a tamper-proof copy whenever the primary system detected deletion, interruption, or unauthorized access. Only 3 people had ever known it existed. I was one. My late business partner, Samuel, had been another. The third was the engineer who built it, and he had died 18 months ago. Knew I had designed redundancies for Adrian, but she did not know where they were or how they worked. She had once mocked me for being incapable of building anything without a backup. At 3:42, Detective entered carrying a thin folder. She sat across from me and placed 3 photographs on the table. The first showed Adrian Vale on white marble beside the fireplace. Blood had spread beneath his head in a dark fan. His right hand was curled near an overturned glass. The second showed my handgun on the floor. The third showed a close view of the silver cufflink beside his body. "My cufflink. I want an attorney," I said. "You should. Then why are you showing me this?" "Because I want to know what you notice." I looked again. The gun was too close to Adrian's left hand. He was right-handed. The wound was high in his chest, angled downward. Whoever fired had been standing less than 6 feet away. The whiskey glass was broken, but no liquid had spread across the marble, and the cufflink beside him was clean. No blood, no dust, no scratches. Placed after the shooting. I looked at, "You already know it was staged." Her expression did not change. "I know the scene contains inconsistencies. You also know I built the security system." "Yes." "Then you know the footage can tell you who was there." "What?" "The footage shows you entering the penthouse at 10:06. It shows Mrs. Cole entering with you. At 10:21, the system goes offline. At 10:32, it resumes. At 10:41, Mrs. Cole leaves alone. And me. You do not appear again. Then either I vanished or someone changed the record." Leaned back. "Can it be changed?" "Anything can be changed. The question is whether the change leaves a scar." She watched me carefully. "Does it?" I did not answer. The recorder behind the wall was my only advantage. If I told the police, it would become evidence. Evidence was cataloged, transported, and handled by people whose loyalties I did not know. Someone had planned this with access to Adrian's private network, my weapon, my marriage, and possibly the police response. I was not ready to surrender the one thing they might have missed. Turned another photograph toward me. It showed the left side of Adrian's face. There was a narrow line of blood beneath his ear. Not from the gunshot, a puncture wound. "What caused that?" I asked. "The medical examiner will determine it." "You have a theory." "So do you." A sedative injection could have lowered his resistance, or delivered something that stopped his heart before the gun was fired. The murder might be more elaborate than it appeared. Gathered the photographs. "Your wife says you discovered the affair yesterday. She says you threatened to kill him." "She is lying. She has messages. Then they are manufactured. She says you struck her in the penthouse." "That never happened." "What?" "She has bruising on her wrist. I remembered her touching my wrist before the darkness took me. The tenderness of it, the performance." Stood. "Mr. Cole, there is blood on your clothing, residue on your right hand, your gun at the scene, and a witness who says you fired it." "My wife did not see me fire anything." "She says she did." "Ask her what color the whiskey was." Stopped at the door. "What?" Adrian kept Japanese whiskey in a square crystal bottle. Amber, almost copper. The glass beside his body was empty and dry. If says I threw it, ask her why there was no liquid. Her eyes sharpened. "You're trying to direct the investigation." "No, I am telling you the room is lying." "Open the door." Before leaving, she looked back. "Rooms do not lie, Mr. Cole." "No," I said. "People arrange them." My attorney arrived at dawn. Ward had represented for 9 years and had never once raised her voice in a courtroom. Judges mistook that calm for gentleness until she began asking questions. She entered the interview room carrying a leather briefcase and one expression: controlled fury. "Not another word," she told me. "I have said very little. That is usually more dangerous with you." By 8, the police had charged me with murder. By 10, every news channel in the city had my wedding photograph beside Adrian Vale's corporate portrait. The story wrote itself. Quiet husband discovers affair. Jealous confrontation. Billionaire lover shot in his own home. The truth was more complicated, which made it less attractive. Held a press conference on the courthouse steps. I watched from a holding cell while she stood behind a row of microphones in a black dress I had bought for my mother's funeral. "My husband was not always a violent man," she said, voice trembling at exactly the right moments. "But over the past year, he became controlling and suspicious. Adrian tried to protect me. He paid for that kindness with his life." A reporter asked whether she had witnessed the shooting. Lowered her eyes. "I saw holding the gun. Not firing it. Holding it." A lawyer's answer was general counsel at Orison Dynamics. She knew how to say something devastating without saying enough to be disproved. Muted the television. "She is very good. She has practiced." "You suspected the affair. I confirmed it 6 days ago. And you did not confront her." "No." "Studied me." "Why?" "Because the affair was not the largest thing she was hiding. I told her about the unusual access requests had detected on Orison's network. Credentials had been used to enter restricted archives related to a shell company called Bellwether Analytics. Adrian had paid Bellwether nearly $40 million over 2 years for behavioral risk modeling. Bellwether had no employees, no office, and no public product. 3 days before the murder, I had the transaction indexed to an offline drive. His face hardened. "Where is the drive?" "In a place cannot access." "Does anyone know you have it?" Adrian might have guessed. "Then this may not be a crime of passion." "It never was." At noon, detective returned with a warrant for our house. Office, vehicles, cloud accounts, and servers. Challenged the scope. The judge approved it anyway. By evening, officers carried 12 boxes out of my home. They found a draft email in my account addressed to Adrian. "Stay away from my wife or I will end you." I had never written it. They found internet searches for untraceable sedatives. I had never made them. They found an unsigned life insurance amendment, naming me as beneficiary of policy. I had never seen it. Someone had not merely framed me for a single act. They had constructed a version of me months in advance. That night, secured a private meeting room and placed a legal pad between us. "Start at the beginning," she said. "Not the marriage, the trap." I told her about the penthouse recorder. For the first time that day, she looked afraid. "You installed undeclared surveillance in a client's home. It is not surveillance in the ordinary sense. It activates only when the primary system is tampered with." "Does it record audio?" "Yes." "Video?" "Low light, fixed angle." "Can it prove what happened?" "If it survived." "Where is it?" "Behind a steel ventilation panel in the west study wall." Stood and began pacing. "We tell." "No." Concealed evidence in a murder investigation is not a philosophical exercise. Someone inside the investigation knew where to find my gun before the search warrant reached my house. That could have been. The gun was in a biometric safe. The audit log shows my fingerprint opened it at 8:11 last night while I was at. Stopped. That is impossible. Exactly. The safe's biometric event could be cloned only by someone with access to the master service key. There were 4 copies. One in a bank vault, one with the manufacturer, and one in the secure office of Orison's head of corporate security, Wynn. Had spent 20 years in law enforcement before Adrian hired him. He knew how evidence moved. He knew how warrants worked. He knew which officers took favors. Sat again. "You think the police are compromised. I think someone planned for them to be useful. Then how do we retrieve the recorder?" "We do not." "Why?" "Because whoever framed me believes it was destroyed during the outage. If we reach for it, they will know they missed." Stared at the wall for a long moment. "You are facing life in prison." "I know. And you want to wait." "I want them to keep moving." She shook her head. "You always believed patience was a weapon." "It is. Only if you live long enough to use it." When she left, a guard returned me to my cell. Near midnight, an officer slid an envelope through the food slot. No return address. Inside was a photograph of entering Vale Tower at 8:42, the night of the murder, 48 minutes before she arrived at our house. On the back, someone had written 5 words. She was never alone upstairs. Vale was. The prosecutor called me a technically sophisticated defendant with the resources to flee and the expertise to destroy digital evidence. The judge agreed. I watched from across the courtroom as she sat behind Adrian's board chairman, Gideon Shaw. Gideon was 70, silver-haired, and famous for speaking softly enough to make other men lean toward him. He had founded Orison with Adrian 23 years earlier, then moved into the ceremonial role of chairman after a public battle over strategy. He had also been best man at my wedding. When our eyes met, he gave me the smallest nod. Sympathy, respect, or warning. With Gideon, the 3 often looked the same. The prosecution's ballistics report arrived the next morning. The bullet removed from Adrian's chest had been fired from my gun. My fingerprints were on the grip. Gunshot residue was present on my right hand. Prints were found on the whiskey bottle, but nowhere near the weapon. Brought the report to the detention center and spread it across the table. This is bad. It is designed to be. The lab found no sign the residue was transferred. They would not. How do you place residue on an unconscious man without leaving evidence? You fire the weapon while his hand is around it. Looked up. You think he used you? I think I was drugged before the shot. Someone could have pressed my finger to the trigger. If that happened, the gun might still be considered fired by you. Only if the angle matched my position. She turned to the trajectory analysis. The bullet traveled downward at 11 degrees. I was 6 feet 2. Adrian was 6 feet 1. If I fired while standing, the angle should have been nearly level. To create the measured path, I would have needed to stand on furniture or Adrian would have needed to kneel. No photograph showed disturbed furniture. Adrian had no bruising on his knees. The scene had been staged carefully, but not perfectly. Can your recorder show the trigger pull? Asked. The camera angle faces the study doors, not the fireplace. We may get reflections in the windows. May. Yes. She closed the folder. There is something else. The medical examiner had found in my blood a sedative used in hospitals. Adrian's blood contained a different drug, succinylcholine, a paralytic that disappeared rapidly after death and was difficult to detect unless specifically tested. The puncture behind his ear had delivered it. He was paralyzed before he was shot, I said, probably conscious, unable to move. That changed the nature of the murder. It was not rage. It was theater. The killer wanted Adrian helpless while the scene was arranged around him. Has access to medical compounds through Orison's research division, said. So do 300 employees. Is investigating what someone allows her to see. Leaned closer. The anonymous photograph came from a traffic camera 2 blocks from Vale Tower. The time stamp is authentic. I found the photographer. Who? She would not give a name. She said to ask about the missing 11 minutes. My attention sharpened. What missing 11 minutes? The penthouse security outage. That lasted 11 minutes. No, official logs show 11. She says the actual interruption was 19 minutes and 8 were reconstructed from footage. That was possible. Orison's system used predictive frame restoration to patch brief failures. Someone could duplicate old hallway footage and insert it into the timeline. Where is the witness? She asked to meet tomorrow. Do not go alone. Wynn will be watching anyone who contacts us. You do not know he is involved. He had access to the safe key, the building, and the security logs. He is involved. Exhaled. Then give me something I can act on. I told her to check the service elevator camera at 10:24. The primary system did not record it continuously. A thermal occupancy sensor logged only weight changes, stored in the elevator controller instead of the central network. If someone used the service elevator during the outage, the penthouse video could be manipulated without erasing the mechanical load log. Wrote it down. Before she left, she placed a clear evidence bag on the table. Inside was my wedding ring. The jail processed your property twice, she said. This was not listed the first time. I looked at the ring. There was a faint red-brown line inside the band. Blood. Whose? I asked. They have not tested it. It was clean when I left the house. You are sure? Yes. Someone had removed it while I was unconscious, put Adrian's blood inside it, and returned it after my arrest. Not enough to strengthen the case. Enough to send a message. They could reach me inside custody. Saw the realization in my face. Tell me what you are thinking. That the frame is no longer the only objective. What is the other? To make me react. Why? Because a calm man is difficult to control. As the guard led me away, another inmate stepped from the shower corridor. He was broad, shaved-headed, and watching me too carefully. On his left wrist was a small black compass tattoo, the same emblem printed on the invoices from Bellwether Analytics. He smiled. "Mr. Cole," he said, "somebody paid a lot of money to meet you." The man with the compass tattoo followed me into the stairwell during evening movement. His name was... He had been transferred into the unit that morning on a parole violation. According to the guard log, the transfer order had come from a clerk who did not exist. He waited until the camera above the landing turned toward the opposite corridor. Then he attacked. He did not try to kill me quickly. He drove me against the railing, pressed his forearm across my throat, and whispered, "Where is the Bellwether copy?" That question saved my life. Men who want information must leave you conscious long enough to answer. I struck the nerve above his elbow, turned beneath his arm, and used his momentum to send him into the concrete wall. He recovered faster than I expected. A sharpened strip of metal appeared in his hand. The camera turned back, saw the lens, and stabbed himself shallowly across the forearm. By the time guards arrived, he was on the floor shouting that I had assaulted him. They placed me in segregation, filed an emergency motion before midnight. Detective arrived before the motion could be heard. She stood outside the cell door while a nurse taped my ribs. "Says you asked him to obtain a weapon. Asked where I kept the Bellwether copy." For the first time, her composure broke. "Only slightly, but I saw it." "You know that name?" I said. She dismissed the nurse and waited until the door closed. Bellwether Analytics appears in Adrian Vale's financial records. It is a shell company. "We have not established that. You have established enough to come here personally." Lowered her voice. "Your attorney's witness disappeared 2 hours before their meeting." Name: Vale's executive assistant. I knew, efficient, observant, almost invisible in rooms full of powerful people. She had scheduled my security audit and signed the maintenance access forms. Disappeared how? Her apartment was open, phone left behind, no sign of struggle. "You keep naming him without proof. You keep defending him without reason." Her jaw tightened. "I am not defending anyone." "Then tell me why New Bellwether." She looked down the corridor. "Because 3 years ago, I investigated a homicide involving an Orison data scientist. The victim had transferred money from Bellwether the week before he died. The case was ruled suicide." "And you disagreed?" "Yes." "Who overruled you?" She did not answer. The prison captain approached and stepped closer to the bars. "The missing 11 minutes are real," she said quietly. "The penthouse system was altered, but the log we recovered contains a gap inside the gap. 8 minutes were inserted from a prior evening. Who authorized the reconstruction?" "Wint." "Then arrest him for altering a security log that he is contractually authorized to maintain. He says the software repaired corrupted footage automatically." "He is lying." "I know." The captain was nearly within hearing distance. Slid a folded paper through the bars. "Your service elevator idea worked. At 10:27, the controller registered 212 pounds traveling from the parking level to the penthouse. At 10:36, 379 pounds went down. 2 people or 1 person carrying something. Was Adrian alive at 10:27? Estimated time of death is between 10:25 and 10:45. Who has access to the service elevator? Vale, Mrs. Cole, building staff, and corporate security." The captain stopped beside her. "Time. Turn to leave." "Detective." She looked back. "Did call the police." "No." "Who did?" An anonymous male caller from a prepaid phone. "Time. 10:44. 2 minutes before Scar exited the garage, according to the official timeline. The caller knew the body would be found. He wanted the police moving before was safely away. That meant she might not control the entire operation. I unfolded the paper after left. It was not only the elevator log. On the reverse, she had written an address and a time. A storage facility. Tomorrow, 6:00 p.m. Below it, NINA left something for you. Secured my release into protective custody the following afternoon after footage of attack proved he had initiated it. The prosecutor objected. The judge ordered a GPS monitor and 24-hour police surveillance. At 5:52, drove me to the storage facility in an unmarked car. Unit 314 contained 1 metal chair, a red coat, and a voice recorder. Code, the same one visible in the photograph, taken outside Vale Tower. I pressed play. His voice filled the small concrete room. "If you are hearing this, they found me before I reached Ward. Mr. Cole arrived at the penthouse at 8:42 with Gideon Shaw. They argued with Adrian for nearly an hour. At 9:50, Wynne came through the service entrance carrying a medical case. There was a scrape, then whispering more quickly. I saw your wife take a gun from her handbag. I heard Adrian say, "You were never getting the company." Then someone entered behind me. The recording ended with a door slamming. Stared at the machine. Can you recover the rest? Maybe. A shadow crossed beneath the storage unit door. Then the lights went out. From the corridor came the metallic sound of a pistol being cocked. Pushed me behind the storage unit wall as the first shot tore through the metal door. She fired twice toward the corridor. The muzzle flashes illuminated a man in a maintenance jacket moving between the units. I pulled the emergency release. The rear panel lifted 6 inches before catching on its chain. Can you fit? I asked. No. Then make it wider. The lock assembly was cheap steel. I drove the chair leg into it until the bracket tore free. We crawled into the service alley as another bullet struck the concrete above us. A black motorcycle accelerated away before it reached the corner. The plate was covered. Back inside, the voice recorder had been smashed by a round, but its memory card remained intact. I gave a copy and kept the original only after she agreed in writing. Trust was not a feeling anymore. It was a chain of custody. This message gave us 3 names and 1 new question. Why had Gideon Shaw arrived before I did? The next morning brought me a letter Adrian had mailed to the day before his death. It had been delayed by the police search. Inside was a brass key and a single sentence. If Bellwether moves again, open the ledger before Gideon does. The key belonged to a private archive company. Adrian had rented a box under a false name 6 months earlier. Obtained a warrant, we opened it together. There was no money inside, no jewelry, only a handwritten ledger bound in gray leather. Adrian had recorded every Bellwether payment. Judges, police officials, data brokers, political consultants, and private investigators. Beside some names, he had written a black dot. Beside others, a red line. Found the name of the captain who had approved transfer. Her name appeared 19 times. The earliest payment was dated 4 years before our marriage began. My wife had not been corrupted by Adrian. She had entered my life already working for him. The ledger showed monthly payments to a trust controlled by her mother. In return, had supplied reports on clients, system architecture, and eventually me. Close the book. This means your marriage may have been an operation. No, the word came too quickly. I remembered meeting at a charity dinner where Adrian had introduced us. I remembered how interested she had been in my work, how easily she laughed at my refusal to discuss clients. I remembered believing privacy made me mysterious. It had made me valuable. At the back of the ledger, 1 page had been torn out. The indentation remained. I shaded it with graphite from pencil. 3 words appeared. Phoenix vote, midnight. Underneath was a date. The date of Orison's emergency board meeting. Scheduled 48 hours after Adrian's funeral. Gideon intended to use the murder to seize permanent control. Photographed the page. Then Adrian expected to die. Or expected someone else to, I said. My phone rang from a blocked number. His voice came through barely above a whisper. They are going to kill. Where are you? Listen to me. Adrian kept a second ledger. Gideon knows you found the first. Did you frame me? Silence. Did you put my gun in that room? I was trying to survive. That is not an answer. It is the only one you will get unless you come alone. She named an abandoned train station across the river. Shook her head. I kept my voice calm. Why should I believe you? Because is alive, said. And because the next body will be yours. Before we left the archive company, I photographed one final detail on the torn page. Beneath the graphite impression was a pressure mark too faint to read at first. Adjusted the angle of her phone light until 4 numbers appeared. 2:17. The time of detective's call. Adrian had written the exact minute the police would contact me before he died. That meant the response had been scheduled, not improvised. Someone had calculated how long it would take officers to reach my house, how long the sedative would keep me unconscious, and when's accusation would become the first coherent story in the room. Saw the numbers and said nothing for several seconds. They planned the investigation before they planned the murder, she finally said. No, I answered. They planned the investigation as part of the murder. The distinction mattered. A killer could make mistakes under pressure. An organization designed not to make mistakes had to be broken at the level of its assumptions. Their central assumption was that I would defend myself. They expected panic, public denial, desperate movement toward the recorder, and anger at. Every predictable act would lead them to the evidence they had missed. So I decided to give them something else. Stillness, not passivity, not surrender. a silence large enough for them to fill with their own fear. The train station had been closed since a fire damaged the eastern platform. At midnight, rain fell through holes in the roof and collected along the rails. Placed officers 2 blocks away, objected to every part of the plan. I went inside alone because would notice fear before she noticed a weapon. She stood beneath the broken departure board wearing a dark coat. "You look tired," she said. "You look alive." "That may change." I stopped 10 feet from her. "Where is?" Moved her to an Orison research property outside the city. "Address?" "I do not know it." "Then you brought me here with nothing." "I brought you a way to find it." She held out Adrian's phone. The screen was cracked and stained near one corner. "He recorded everything," she said. "Not because he trusted facts, because he trusted leverage." I did not take the phone. "Did you kill him?" Her face tightened. "No." "Did you drug me?" "Yes." "Did you take my gun?" "Yes." "Did you put my hand around it?" She looked away. The silence answered. "You were going to frame me whether Adrian died or not," I said. "He was supposed to shoot you." The station seemed to become quieter. Continued before I could speak. "Adrian planned to stage an intrusion. You would arrive angry. He would claim self-defense. Would handle the footage. And you. I was supposed to say you attacked us. You asked me there to be murdered. I did not know until that evening. I tried to change the plan. You drugged me. To keep you from fighting him. You took my weapon. Because Adrian ordered me to." She was still arranging responsibility into smaller pieces, hoping no single piece would look like betrayal. "What went wrong?" I asked. "Gideon arrived. He and Adrian argued about Phoenix. Adrian said he had enough votes to remove him. Then someone injected Adrian from behind." "Who?" "I could not see. Cut the lights. There was a shot. When the emergency lamps came on, Adrian was on the floor and you were unconscious. And you framed me." Gideon said either you took the blame or both of us died in that room. I finally took the phone. "Why give me this now?" "Because Gideon will kill me after the board vote." "You helped him." "I helped myself. That has always been your defense." She stepped closer. "I know you hate me. Hate requires more energy than you deserve." The words struck harder than anger would have. Her eyes filled, but she did not cry. "The phone has a locked recording," she said. "Adrian scheduled it to release if his biometric account went inactive. It needs your voice print." "Why mind?" "He said you were the only man in the room who would listen after he died." I activated the device. A prompt appeared. "Nathan Cole, say the security phrase." The phrase came from a job Adrian, and I had completed years earlier. A locked door protects only the man who knows why it is locked. The file opened. Adrian's voice filled the station. "If you are hearing this, Gideon moved first. Phoenix is not a takeover, it is a deletion. Orison has been building illegal identity models from medical, financial, and criminal records. Bellwether sold access. Phoenix will erase the source archive and kill the people who can authenticate it." A list of names appeared. Mine was first, S was second, Detective was third, Julian Cross, Orison's chief financial officer, was fourth. Adrian continued. "Gideon thinks I kept the archive in the tower. I moved it. The location is hidden in the second ledger. Knows more than she admits. Do not trust her." The message ended. I looked up. Was gone. On the platform where she had stood lay a small silver pendant. Inside was a photograph of us on our wedding day. Behind it, scratched into the metal, were coordinates. Entered from the shadows. Did she confess? Enough. I showed her the coordinates. She checked them against her phone. They lead to a reservoir property owned by Orison. Called her team. Before the call connected, her phone displayed an incoming emergency alert. A body had been found in Julian Cross's office. The chief financial officer had been dead less than an hour. A red line had been drawn across his mouth. We reached the reservoir property before dawn. It looked like a research lodge from the road, but thermal imaging showed reinforced rooms beneath the main building. Orison had used it to test surveillance systems away from regulators. Obtained tactical support from a federal unit outside the city. She no longer trusted her own department. The entry team found 2 guards, one empty medical room, and locked inside a soundproof chamber. She was dehydrated, bruised, and alive. When she saw me, she asked one question. "Did they arrest?" "Not yet." "Then he will come back." At the hospital, told us what happened in the penthouse. She had returned for Adrian's signature after forgetting a document. She saw and Gideon arguing near the study. Arrived carrying a medical case. Hid in the service pantry when she heard Adrian shouting. Through a narrow gap, she saw me unconscious in a chair. Who injected Adrian? Asked. I saw a hand behind him, said. A man's hand, large ring, black stone. Gideon always wore an onyx ring. What about the gunshot? The lights went out. I heard say this was not the deal. Then the shot. Who had the gun? I saw it in his hand before the lights failed. That made her either the killer or the final person Gideon wanted blamed. Had escaped through a laundry passage. She later retrieved the red coat from her apartment and prepared the recording, but found her before she met. Julian helped me hide, she said. He said he had proof Gideon paid through Bellwether. Julian was now dead. The red line across his mouth matched the markings in Adrian's ledger. It was not decoration. It identified people who had spoken to investigators. Received the autopsy update by phone. Julian had been injected with insulin, then placed beside an empty bottle to suggest suicide. The killer understood medical staging. Gideon has no medical training, said. Was a combat medic before he joined the police, replied. Gripped my sleeve. There is something else. Adrian did not die from the first shot. We all looked at her. After the gun fired, he was still breathing. Said the bullet missed the heart. Gideon told to finish it. What did she? I heard a second sound, not a shot like a glass breaking. The medical examiner had documented only one bullet wound. Adrian's skull showed no blunt injury. But the puncture behind his ear could have been used twice, first paralytic, then a lethal dose. May have delivered the second injection, or someone wanted to believe she had. Before leaving the hospital, I asked why she had risked returning for her coat and recorder. She looked toward the rain beyond the window. Because Adrian was a terrible man, she said. But he did not deserve to have the truth buried with him. My phone buzzed. A video message from an unknown number showed, tied to a chair in a dark room. A digital clock behind her counted down from 6 hours. Stepped into frame. Bring the ledger and Adrian's phone to the Phoenix board meeting, he said. Come alone. If you involve the police, your wife dies before the first vote. The image froze on his face. She looked terrified. Watched me. You cannot save the woman who framed you by giving them the evidence. No. Then what are you going to do? I replayed the video and focused on the clock reflection in the window behind. The numbers were reversed, so was a neon sign beyond the glass. I recognized it. The room was not hidden outside the city. It was inside Vale Tower. Vale Tower remained under partial police control, but Gideon still owned the building and half the people guarding it. Wanted to raid immediately. I stopped her. The video is bait. Expects us to identify the location. May be inside. She may also be acting. Studied me. You think your wife would fake her own kidnapping? I think she already invited me to my execution. We reviewed the footage frame by frame. The knot around her wrist was loose. Her chair cast 2 shadows, meaning the room used studio lights. The countdown clock had no power cable. But one detail was real. A bruise beneath her jaw had deepened since the train station. Someone had struck her. The kidnapping could be staged and dangerous at the same time. Called with worse news. Prosecutors had found new footage showing me leaving Vale Tower at 10:38 carrying a dark object. The enhancement identified it as my gun case. That footage cannot exist, I said. I was unconscious. It is convincing enough for the judge. They are revoking release. The frame had moved again. Every time we found a weakness, someone added evidence. Traced the video source to Orison's internal media lab. The lab specialized in synthetic identity reconstruction, systems capable of generating a realistic version of a person from archived camera data. Adrian's company did not merely collect faces. It could manufacture them. My alibi had not disappeared. It had been replaced. Federal agents moved me to a safe location while prepared warrants. During transport, our convoy was redirected by a false road closure. A truck blocked the narrow street behind us. The first vehicle exploded. Not a fireball, a controlled charge that disabled the engine and filled the street with smoke. Men in tactical uniforms approached, shouting federal commands. The agent beside me reached for the door. Wait, I said. Their patches were correct, but their boots were not standard issue. One man wore the black compass tattoo above his glove. I kicked the door lock as they pulled it open, trapping the first attacker's arm. Fired from the front car. The street erupted in short, disciplined bursts. Appeared through the smoke. He did not shoot at me. He held up one finger and pointed to his ear. My phone rang inside the evidence pouch. I answered on speaker, whispered, give them what they want, smiled from 20 yards away. Then a sniper round struck the pavement beside my foot. They have again, said, and they will kill next. Heard her name. Back toward the smoke as police sirens approached. Before disappearing, he dropped a small object. It was my missing cuff link. Inside the hinge was Back at the safe house, we opened it on an isolated computer. The drive contained the original security plan for the penthouse and a list of hidden devices. The integrity recorder behind the west wall was circled in red. They knew about it. A second file showed a live image of the study wall being demolished. The recorder was gone. Looked at me. Was that our only copy? I watched workers pull steel from the wall. No, the hidden recorder was never the archive. It was the trigger. When tampering occurred, it transmitted one encrypted burst through a building sensor, no one considered part of the network. The fire alarm's radio diagnostic channel. The real copy had been waiting inside a disaster server since the night Adrian died. I had not opened it because doing so would notify the server custodian, Samuel's widow, Grace, the one person I had promised never to involve again. I called her. A man answered. Gideon Shaw said, "You are finally ready to watch the truth." Gideon had Grace. He also had the disaster server. "I always admired Samuel's design," he said over the phone. "A backup so isolated even Adrian could not find it. Let her go. Bring the ledger to the board meeting. You already have the server. Encrypted, your voice print opens Adrian's phone. Your heartbeat signature opens Samuel's vault." Samuel had built the vault to resist coercion by measuring pulse, rhythm, and respiration. Gideon needed me calm enough to authenticate. That was why the frame had been so elaborate. He did not only want me imprisoned. He wanted me frightened, exhausted, and eventually obedient. "You killed Adrian," I said. "Adrian killed himself years ago. I only selected the date." "And Julian, a weak man who discovered courage too late." The casual admission was not legally useful without proof, but was recording. Gideon knew she would be. "Do not waste the recording, detective," he said. "My lawyers will call it performance." Then he ended the call. Grace was found 30 minutes later in a parked car near the courthouse. Dead, no visible wound, a small puncture beneath her ear. The same method used on Adrian. The third murder changed something in me. Adrian had chosen his world. Julian had entered it knowingly. Grace had not. She had preserved Samuel's work because she trusted me when I said it would never endanger her. My patience had become part of the cost. At the morgue, I stood beside the covered body while waited by the door. "You are blaming yourself," she said. "I gave a promise I could not keep. You did not kill her." "No, but Gideon understood I would wait for certainty." "What would Samuel tell you?" "That anger makes bad architecture." Placed a hand on my shoulder. "Then build something better." The Phoenix board vote began in 11 hours. Gideon expected me to arrive with the ledger and Adrian's phone, expected to control every entrance. His role remained uncertain. Was under federal protection, but the leak inside the police department meant no location was permanent. I returned to under guard and opened the oldest system Samuel and I had built. It was called Janus. Janus could release separate pieces of evidence to different recipients, each piece altered just enough to identify who shared it. It was not a weapon. It was a loyalty test. I prepared 4 packages. To Gideon, a message suggesting, "Possess the second ledger." 2, proof that Gideon had ordered to kill her after the vote. 2, a bank record showing Gideon had canceled his escape payment. To the corrupt police captain, a file implying had named him in Adrian's recording. Each package contained enough truth to be believed and enough incompleteness to provoke fear. Watch the transmissions. You are turning them against each other. No, they are already against each other. I am removing the illusion of partnership. What about the recording? The disaster server creates a temporary local key when the vault is accessed. Gideon will bring it to the only room he believes he controls completely. The boardroom. I nodded. The boardroom fire panel was connected to the same diagnostic channel as Adrian's penthouse. Gideon had carried the archive into my network. At 11:48 p.m., Janus confirmed all 4 packages had been opened. At 12:03, called Gideon 14 times. At 12:11, the corrupt captain left police headquarters carrying a rifle case. At 12:19, sent me a single message. "I know who fired the shot." Then the tracker hidden in Adrian's phone showed movement toward Vale Tower. The trap had begun. At 1:06 a.m., detective arrested me in front of every camera outside. She pushed me against the hood of her car, read the charge loudly, and told reporters that new evidence had placed me at the center of 3 related deaths. The arrest was a lie. It was also the only way to move me into Vale Tower without changing his plan. His department still supplied security for Adrian's funeral and the Phoenix vote. A prisoner transfer through the underground court passage would place us beneath the building at 11 that morning. Gideon would see a defeated suspect, would see a controlled asset. The corrupt captain would believe had chosen his side. Inside the transport van, she removed one cuff. You understand that if this fails, the public record will show I arrested you for murder. If it fails, the public record will be the least important part. She handed me a miniature transmitter, disguised as the clasp of my watch. I lied during the first interview, she said. About what? The puncture behind Adrian's ear. We knew before I spoke to you that the paralytic did not kill him. What did? The bullet caused massive bleeding, but he survived for almost 12 minutes. The fatal event was air injected into an intravenous line hidden beneath his collar. An air embolism. Silent, fast, and nearly impossible to prove without knowing where to look. Who had the line? I asked. The killer placed it before the gunshot. We found adhesive residue along his shoulder. What? That required planning and close physical contact. Possibly. Why hide it from me? Because the report leaked within 20 minutes. Only 4 people had the full detail. One was my captain. The same captain now heading toward Vale Tower with a rifle case. Had fed each official a different false cause of death. Her captain had repeated the air embolism version during a monitored call. Her lie had identified the leak. We entered the underground passage at 10:32. The captain met us beside the service elevator. He was a thick man named Dane. 26 years in the department, decorated twice, trusted by judges. He looked at my half-fastened cuff. Secure him. Clicked it closed. Dane pressed the elevator control. His rifle case leaned against the wall. What is that for? She asked. Ceremonial detail. At a funeral. You know what kind of people are attending. The doors opened. Stood inside with 2 Orison guards. Dane smiled. That was the confession before the confession. Took my arm. Chairman Shaw wants to speak with the prisoner. He is in my custody, said. Not in this building. Dane drew his weapon and aimed it at her. For a moment, no one moved. Then slowly placed her pistol on the floor, searched her, and removed the transmitter from beneath her collar. He crushed it under his shoe. He did not find the one in my watch. They separated us on the 38th floor. Was taken toward the security offices. I was brought to a small chapel prepared for Adrian's private funeral. Gideon stood alone beside the closed casket. You made a convincing arrest, he said. So did you. He smiled. Did Janus tell you I opened the package? It told me everyone did. His smile faded. You think fear will divide us? No, greed will. He walked to the casket and rested one hand on it. Adrian believed information made him immortal. Yet here he is, contained by 6 feet of polished wood. You are afraid of a dead man's recording. I am afraid of careless interpretation. You killed Grace. Grace refused to cooperate. You call murder a refusal. I call consequences by their proper name. My watch transmitted every word through the fire diagnostic channel. Or I hoped it did. Gideon leaned close. At midnight, you will open the vault. Afterward, your wife will confess to killing Adrian, and you will disappear during transport. Agreed to that. She will. The chapel door opened. Entered in black, escorted by. There was dried blood at the corner of her mouth. She looked at Gideon, then at me. I know who pulled the trigger, she said. Gideon turned and locked the chapel door from the inside. As the funeral guests filled the chapel, I remembered the first time Gideon had spoken to me about loyalty. It was at my wedding reception, after and I had cut the cake. He told me loyalty was not proven when people had choices. It was proven when every alternative carried pain. At the time, I thought he was describing commitment. Now I understood he had been describing captivity. From the maintenance room, I watched him greet senators, executives, clergy, and men whose names appeared in Adrian's ledger. They shook his hand as though proximity to grief made them innocent. One board member paused beside and whispered something that made her flinch. Another placed a hand on Gideon's shoulder and asked when the emergency vote would proceed. Adrian's body had not yet been buried. They were already dividing what he owned. Noticed me watching. This is what power looks like, he said. No, I answered. This is what fear looks like when it can afford tailoring. He smiled, but his eyes did not. The funeral began with 3 living people trapped beside a dead man, kept one hand inside his jacket. Stood near the casket, studying Gideon as though she had finally learned the cost of underestimating him. Gideon remained composed. Tell us, he said, who fired the shot. Looked at me. You did. Smiled. I did not. Then she added, but was unconscious. Gideon's expression changed by a fraction. Continued. Wrapped hand around the gun. He fired through it while Adrian was paralyzed. Drew his weapon. You were not facing us. I saw the window. The penthouse study had glass walls overlooking the city. The fireplace reflected in them after dark. Had watched the murder in the reflection. You injected the air, I said. Her eyes moved to mine. No, Gideon did. Gideon laughed quietly. A desperate woman makes a poor witness. You wore surgical gloves, she said. You used the line had placed. Adrian was alive when you bent over him. You told him Phoenix would erase every mistake he had made, including me. Aimed at. Enough. Gideon raised a hand. He did not want her dead yet. He wanted her statement, her signature, and the appearance of suicide after confession. Outside the chapel, mourners began arriving. Through the wall came low voices, camera shutters, the soft performance of grief. Gideon adjusted his cuffs. At the service, will remain hidden. Will sit with the family. You will ensure neither causes embarrassment. He opened the door and left, forced into a side room and locked her there. Then he turned to me. Where is the ledger? Has a copy. So do 12 federal offices. He hit me once in the ribs, exactly where had injured me. You are lying. Yes. The answer unsettled him more than denial. I leaned against the wall. Gideon canceled your payment. I saw the file. He thinks you killed Julian carelessly. I followed his instructions. He also told the police captain you would be blamed for Grace. Glanced toward the door. Janus had done its work. The truth did not need to be complete. It only needed to match the fear already present. You think Gideon will let you leave after Phoenix? I asked. You know the archive, you know the bodies. You are the last loose end. He needs me. Adrian thought the same. The funeral music began. Ordered me into a maintenance room overlooking the chapel through one-way glass. From there, I watched the city's most respected people mourn a man many of them had paid to betray. Gideon delivered the eulogy. He called Adrian brilliant, difficult, irreplaceable. Sat in the front row beneath the gaze of 100 cameras. No one could see the bruise beneath her makeup. Captain Dane stood near the rear doors. Was nowhere visible. During the final hymn, a message appeared on my watch display. Fire channel active. Archive handshake detected. The disaster server was in the building. A second message followed. Unknown user attempting decryption. Gideon had begun before the board vote. Then the chapel lights flickered. The fire alarm sounded once and stopped. On the other side of the glass, Captain Dane touched his earpiece. Entered the maintenance room and looked at my watch. I covered the display too late. He tore it from my wrist. What did you activate? Nothing. He crushed the watch against the wall. The transmission had already completed. Every microphone in the chapel came alive. Gideon's voice from our earlier conversation filled the room. Grace refused to cooperate. Hundreds of mourners heard it. Cameras turned toward him. Then another recording began. This time it was voice from the penthouse. Is unconscious, do it now. The crowd erupted, stared at me. That recording was not in the archive. No, I said, it was in your phone. His face went white. Someone had used Janus to turn the funeral into an execution of trust. But it was not me. Panic moved faster than security. Reporters blocked the chapel exits. Board members demanded explanations. Gideon ordered the microphones cut, but every phone in the room was already recording. Dragged me through a service corridor. Who accessed my phone? I do not know. He struck me again. That answer frightened him because it was true. Janus had delivered packages, but I had not programmed the funeral broadcast. Someone else had entered the fire channel and used our infrastructure. The message on my watch had said unknown user. Took me to Adrian's former office. Behind the desk, a section of oak paneling stood open. A steel safe descended into the floor. Gideon waited beside it with and Captain Dane. Was on her knees, hands bound behind her. The disaster server sat on a table between them. You embarrassed me, Gideon said. I was locked in a room. Do not insult either of us. He pointed to the safe. Open it. The safe was Samuel's design, moved from an off-site vault after Grace's death. Gideon had discovered the hardware but not the authentication sequence. I placed my palm against the sensor. A green line measured pulse rhythm. Slow, Gideon warned. If fear changed my baseline, the safe would seal for 24 hours. I thought of Grace. Then I let the anger pass through me without holding it. The light turned blue. Voice phrase, the system requested. Gideon leaned closer. I spoke clearly. Janus opens both faces. The safe unlocked. Inside were 3 drives and a paper file labeled Phoenix. Gideon reached for it. The safe snapped shut around his wrist. Not hard enough to break bone, but hard enough to trap him. Samuel had always disliked impatient men. At the same moment, the office doors locked. The wall monitors turned on, appeared on every screen. She was alive, seated inside a federal command center. "You should have checked the second fire panel," she said. Had helped Samuel test the penthouse system years earlier. She knew more about the archive than I realized. After the reservoir rescue, she had worked with federal technicians to enter Janus. She had broadcast the recordings. Gideon pulled against the safe. "Release me." "No," said. The monitors displayed transaction records, call logs, and video clips from the penthouse. Not the full murder yet, enough to show the conspiracy existed. Captain Dane raised his gun toward the screens, swept his legs from beneath him, had loosened one of her restraints earlier by hiding a cutting strip in the seam of sleeve, seized Dane's weapon before he recovered, aimed at her, stepped between them. "Shoot her," Gideon ordered. Did not move. On another screen appeared his canceled transfer and a recording of Gideon speaking to Dane. After Phoenix, Wynn takes responsibility for all operational decisions. Looked at Gideon. "You said that file was fake." "Parts of it were," I said. "Which parts?" "That is the problem with betrayal. You never know which truth will kill you." Sirens rose outside the tower. Federal agents were approaching from multiple levels. Gideon stopped struggling and became calm again. He looked at, "You have the second ledger." She shook her head. "Adrian gave it to someone else." "Who?" The office intercom clicked. Adrian's recorded voice answered. "To the only person none of you noticed." A side door opened. An elderly cleaning woman entered pushing a cart. She removed her gray wig. Beneath it was short black hair. Grace's sister. She held the missing ledger and fired. The bullet struck high in the shoulder and spun her against the cleaning cart. Fired back, dropped behind Adrian's desk as glass shattered across the office. Pulled into cover. I forced the safe release and dragged Gideon away from the line of fire, not to save him, but to keep him alive long enough to answer. Captain Dane reached for his fallen weapon. Gideon kicked it toward him. That small movement exposed everything. Even with federal agents climbing the stairs and the archive playing on the walls, Gideon still believed Dane was useful. Dane grabbed the gun and aimed at. Shot him. She used the pistol hidden beneath the funeral flowers. Dane fell beside the safe. The wound was not fatal, but the room went silent. Kept the gun raised. "You came armed to a funeral," I said. "I came prepared to leave one." Remained behind the desk. Covered his position. Was conscious. Blood darkened her sleeve, but the round had passed through. Gideon looked at with something close to pride. "Give me the second ledger," he said, "and I can still protect you." She laughed once. "You were going to make me confess. I was going to give you a future. In prison, a future is relative." Looked at me. "Take the ledger, get out. I will keep them here." "Why?" "Because I know what happens when Gideon loses control." "So do I." "No, you know systems, I know him." She offered me the gun. It was the same model as mine, but not my weapon. A twin purchased through a bellwether proxy. The murder frame had used both guns. One to fire the fatal bullet, one to stage residue and confuse handling evidence. "Tell me the final truth," I said. "This is not the time. It is the only time you have." She lowered her voice. "I did not know Adrian planned to kill you until we reached the penthouse. I drugged you because I thought I could delay him. When fired through your hand, the bullet hit Adrian. Gideon inserted the line and killed him. I helped move you. I planted the cuff link. I lied to the police. And Julian. I gave the address where Julian was hiding. Grace." Her face broke. "I did not know. You always say you did not know the last consequence. I am telling you what I did know." "And the marriage." She looked at the floor. "At first Adrian told me to get close to you. Then I loved you. Both things are true. That does not make either harmless." "No." It was the first answer she had given without defense. Federal agents struck the outer door. Had engaged the internal lock. Gideon watched the exchange carefully. "You see," he said to me, "she will trade confession for forgiveness." Raised the gun toward him. "I am not asking for forgiveness." Gideon's phone rang. He answered on speaker. A distorted voice said, "The Phoenix Purge is ready. Confirm deletion." Gideon smiled. The archive displayed on the walls was not the only copy. Phoenix was designed to erase source records across hospitals, banks, courts, and Orison servers. If activated, it would destroy evidence and corrupt thousands of legitimate identities. "Open the safe fully," Gideon told me, "or I confirm. You need the biometric key inside. I need your pulse." Place the pistol against her own chest. "Use mine." Everyone turned. Gideon stared at her. She smiled through tears. You built Phoenix around family authorization, didn't you? Adrian made me his emergency successor. My biometric profile can confirm the purge. She had just made herself more valuable than me. Then she looked at Gideon. Let him leave, and I will erase everything. It was her final bargain. Gideon agreed too quickly. Gideon released the office locks. Federal agents entered the outer corridor but triggered a gas suppression system that filled it with opaque vapor. Alarms screamed. Visibility fell to inches. Press the second ledger into my hand. Go through Adrian's private elevator, she said. You are not staying. I need him to believe I will activate Phoenix. He will kill you after. I know. For the first time in our marriage, she was not pretending survival and virtue were the same thing. I lifted beneath her uninjured arm, covered us while remotely opened the private elevator. Gideon called through the smoke. If you leave, every person in that archive becomes collateral. I kept moving. His threat depended on my need to control the ending. Samuel had taught me that some systems could not be defeated by holding. They had to be allowed to expose their own failure. The elevator descended 3 floors and stopped. Power died. The emergency light came on. Was pale from blood loss. Tried the hatch. Locked from above. A speaker crackled. Said, you should have brought the ledger to the boardroom. Then the elevator began to rise. He was returning us to Gideon. I opened the maintenance panel and found the brake controller. Had installed the unit 12 years earlier. I crossed 2 contacts with the metal edge of my belt. The elevator stopped between floors, forced the ceiling hatch. We climbed into the shaft and reached a service door on the 41st floor. 3 armed men waited beyond it. The first lunged before he saw Spadge. She disarmed him. I drove the second into the wall. The third fired, the round cutting through my jacket without touching skin. Struck him with the brass handle of the ledger case. We reached the medical floor where agents had established a temporary position. Paramedics took. Received an update through her radio. Haz and Gideon in the boardroom. Dane is missing. Federal teams lost him in the gas. Dane is wounded. Still dangerous. The building network flashed a Phoenix warning. Purge authorization stage 1 complete. Had entered her biometric profile. Looked at me. She is actually doing it. No, she is buying time. How much? Phoenix requires 2 family authorizations. Adrian's and his successor, S. Adrian is dead. His biometric token is not. The cracked phone in my pocket vibrated. Adrian's device had been cloned when gave it to me. Gideon possessed the physical original, but Janus still controlled its authentication handshake. I could deny Phoenix from the medical floor. I did not. Understood. You want them to believe the purge can complete. I want Gideon to confess where the source archive is before he destroys it. And if completes stage 2, then we have 90 seconds to stop it. That is not a plan. It is the remaining truth. At 11:57 p.m., the tower lights changed from white to red. The board members had been locked inside the top floor chamber. Live financial feeds showed Orison shares collapsing as funeral recordings spread worldwide. Connected us to the boardroom audio. Gideon's voice came through. At midnight, Phoenix removes the evidence, signs the succession, dies resisting arrest, we rebuild. Answered and me. You leave with everything I promised. The hesitation that followed was almost visible. Janus had shown the canceled payment. He no longer believed promises. I took Adrian's phone from my pocket and entered the final command. The boardroom doors sealed. The Fire Channel archive began recording. Midnight arrived. Phoenix requested the second authorization, and someone behind us chambered around. Captain Dane stood at the end of the medical corridor, blood soaking his shirt. His rifle was aimed at my head. Dane's first shot hit the wall where my head had been, pulled me behind a medication cart and returned fire. Paramedics dragged into an operating room. The corridor lights pulsed red as Phoenix waited for authorization. Dane advanced slowly, one hand pressed to his wound. You should have stayed arrested, he called. You should have stayed honest, answered. He laughed. Honest men retire poor. The next exchange shattered the glass doors beside us. His magazine ran dry. Dane heard the empty click and moved faster. I rolled Adrian's phone beneath the medication cart. He saw it. Every man in Gideon's operation had been taught that the phone controlled the archive. Dane stepped into the open to retrieve it. Struck him with the steel oxygen bottle. He fired once into the ceiling, collapsed, and reached for the phone. I pinned his wrist until federal agents entered from the stairwell. They carried him away, still promising that Gideon owned judges. At 12:00:41, Phoenix displayed 49 seconds remaining. I retrieved Adrian's phone. The screen showed the second authorization request. His biometric signature was active in the boardroom. I said into his radio, "Open the west wall packet." The integrity recorder had been removed from Adrian's study, but its encrypted burst remained divided across 7 fire sensors. No single sensor contained usable evidence. Together, they reconstructed the missing 19 minutes. The file opened on the boardroom monitors, the medical floor screens, and every federal command terminal connected to Janus. The image was grainy, fixed at an angle toward the study doors. The fireplace itself appeared only as a reflection in the dark window. At 10:06, and I entered. At 10:14, Adrian handed me a glass. At 10:19, my head lowered, caught the glass before it fell. At 10:22, entered carrying a medical case. At 10:24, Gideon entered through the service door. There was no guesswork now. Adrian pointed at Gideon and shouted, though the audio was faint. "You are finished. Phoenix belongs to me." Moved behind Adrian and inserted a line beneath his collar. Gideon placed a syringe into it. Adrian remained standing for several seconds before his muscles failed. Removed my handgun from her handbag. She gave it to, positioned my unconscious hand around the grip and fired. The bullet struck Adrian high in the chest. He fell beside the fireplace. Screamed, "You said it would be a warning." Gideon knelt beside Adrian and spoke close to his face. The recorder amplified the contact microphone in the wall. "You confused ownership with permission," Gideon said. He pushed air through the line. Adrian's body convulsed once and became still. The murder was complete, but the video continued. Pressed my fingers to the gun, then placed it near the body. Wiped surfaces and planted my cufflink. Gideon directed the staging with the patience of a man arranging furniture. At 10:35, appeared in the pantry reflection. At 10:36, the service elevator carried and another man downward. The second man was Captain Dane. At 10:39, knelt beside me. For 6 seconds, she did nothing. Then she touched my face and whispered words the contact microphone barely caught. "I am sorry I chose the wrong monster." She stood, took Adrian's phone, and left me to be found. In the boardroom audio, Gideon began shouting for the screens to be turned off. They would not respond. The Phoenix timer reached 10 seconds. His voice came through the radio. "Stop it. You can stop it. He has my hand on the reader." "Then move." A gunshot sounded in the boardroom. The biometric signal broke. Phoenix froze at 3 seconds. Then the system displayed. Successor authorization failed. Purge ABORTED. On the live boardroom feed, stood over Gideon with a smoking pistol. Had fallen beside the conference table. I could not see where the bullet had struck. Federal agents breached the boardroom 32 seconds later. By then, the alliances had collapsed. Gideon was behind the chairman's chair, one hand pressed to a wound in his side. Stood near the windows holding 2 weapons. Lay motionless on the carpet. 12 board members crouched beneath the table. Pointed one pistol at Gideon and the other at the door. "No one comes closer," he said. The agents held position. I entered behind, saw me and smiled without humor. "You built a good trap. You walked into it." Gideon walked into it. I am walking out. Through 40 federal agents. Through her, he aimed at. She opened her eyes. The shot had grazed her temple. Blood covered one side of her face, but she was conscious. Dragged her upright and placed the pistol beneath her jaw. Gideon remained strangely calm. "Kill her," he said. "She is the only successor Phoenix recognizes." Looked at him. "You still think Phoenix matters? The archive is worth more than all of us. That is why you canceled my payment." Gideon did not deny it. I stepped farther into the room. "The full recording is already outside the building. You think I care about prison? I think you care about being used. I used people too. Yes, but you believed you would be paid for it." His grip tightened, whispered for me to move back. I kept my eyes on. "Gideon ordered Grace's death and prepared the transfer that placed it on you. He ordered Julian's death, then wrote the report that called you unstable. He planned to give Dane your location after the vote." Turned slightly toward Gideon. "That was all needed." She drove her heel into his knee and dropped. Fired. The round struck his shoulder. He spun and discharged both weapons. One bullet entered the ceiling. The other struck Gideon in the chest. Fell against the windows. Agents crossed the room and disarmed him. Gideon remained standing for several seconds, looking almost offended by the blood spreading across his shirt. Then he sat in the chairman's chair. A medic approached. Gideon pushed him away. "Do you know what Adrian's mistake was?" he asked me. "Thinking you were his partner." "No. Believing people object to corruption. They object only to exclusion." His breathing became shallow. Activated her recorder. Did you order the murders of Adrian Vale, Julian Cross, and Grace Mercer? Gideon smiled. You have the film. I want your answer. You want a clean ending. No, I said. She wants your voice. He looked at me. You and I are alike. We build systems and wait for people to behave according to design. The difference is that I allow them to choose, and then punish the choice. I preserve it. Gideon's eyes moved toward. She chose Adrian. Yes. She chose you at first because we paid her. Yes. And you still came to save her. I came to stop you. That distinction will keep you awake. His pulse faded before the medic could begin treatment. Gideon Shaw died in the chair he had spent 20 years trying to own. Survived. Survived. The board members survived. For a few minutes, it seemed the murders had ended. Then's voice came through the boardroom speakers. The recording has another layer. On the monitor, the penthouse footage rewound to the moment after the first gunshot. The visual reflection remained the same, but a second audio channel opened, one hidden beneath an ultrasonic security carrier. A woman's voice said, Gideon, if you kill him now, the succession transfers to me. Closed her eyes. The boardroom became silent. She had not merely witnessed the plan. She had negotiated her inheritance while Adrian was dying. The hidden audio did not make the shooter. It made her something harder to forgive. She had known Gideon intended to kill Adrian before the trigger was pulled. The restored channel captured their conversation at 8:51, nearly an hour before she came to my house. Gideon told her Adrian planned to kill me and blame the confrontation on jealousy. He offered another arrangement. She would lure me upstairs, would use my gun, Adrian would die, and would inherit his emergency voting authority. Her answer was clear. What happens to? Gideon said prison if he cooperates, an accident if he does not. Waited 7 seconds. Then she asked, when do I sign? In the boardroom, agents watched her hear the bargain again. She sat on the carpet with blood drying along her cheek. I changed my mind, she said. After you drugged me, I asked. After I saw prepare the line. You knew before you came home. I thought Gideon wanted leverage. I did not believe he would actually. You asked when to sign. Her voice dropped. Yes. Read her rights. Did not resist when the cuffs closed. Before they took her away. She looked at the screen where our younger selves appeared in a photograph from the anniversary dinner. Was any of it real to you? I asked. She gave the only honest answer left. Some of it, not enough of it. Located the second ledger's final cipher inside's copy. It listed every Phoenix target and every official who had received bellwether money. Federal teams executed warrants across 4 states before sunrise. The source archive was not in Vale Tower. Gideon had distributed it across hospital backup systems, believing no government would risk shutting them down. Janus did not destroy the archive. It quarantined the illegal models while preserving patient records. Adrian's dead man message went public at noon. Orison's stock collapsed. The board resigned. Regulators froze bellwether accounts holding more than $600 million. Began negotiating before surgeons removed the bullet from his shoulder. He offered names, accounts, and the locations of evidence from 3 earlier deaths. Captain Dane refused to cooperate until showed him the funeral recording. Then he asked for protection from, unaware had already named him. Admitted he had been paid to fright me, not kill me. He had been told the bellwether copy was worth enough to buy a new identity. Everyone had believed someone else would keep a promise. That was the architecture Gideon had built. Loyalty purchased from people who trusted money more than one another. 3 days later, I returned to Adrian's penthouse with. The study wall was open, wires hanging where the recorder had been removed. The white marble had been cleaned, but one dark stain remained in the grout. Stood by the window. You knew the recorder existed from the first night. Yes. You could have told me. Yes. Grace might still be alive. The words were not accusation. That made them heavier. I thought waiting would reveal the entire network. It did. At a cost. All investigations have a cost. That does not make the cost acceptable. She looked at the city. You are allowed to regret the right decision. I am not certain it was right. No honest person ever is. I walked to the ventilation panel and reached inside the cavity. Behind the recorder mount was a narrow envelope I had not placed there. Adrian's handwriting covered the front. For Nathan, after the truth. Inside was 1 page. Came to me 4 years ago under Gideon's orders. She stayed after the assignment ended. Do not confuse that with innocence. Do not confuse guilt with the absence of love. At the bottom, Adrian had written, I you because she feared losing you more than she ever feared losing me. I folded the page. Adrian had tried to turn even his final message into leverage. I left it on the blood-stained marble and walked away. Asked whether I wanted Adrian's letter entered into evidence. No, it may clarify motive. It clarifies Adrian's need to control the last conversation. She nodded and left it where I had placed it. Before we exited the penthouse, I stood in the exact position where I had been unconscious. The city lights reflected in the glass, recreating the angle had seen. In the reflection, the study appeared whole, even though the wall behind us had been torn open. That was the danger of reflected images. They preserved shape while reversing direction. My marriage had worked the same way. From the outside, we looked stable because every fracture had been turned away from view. I had called my silence trust, had called her secrecy survival. Both words made the image easier to live with. Neither changed what stood behind it. His trial began 7 months later. She was charged with conspiracy to commit murder, evidence tampering, kidnapping, obstruction, and participation in the Bellwether enterprise. She was not charged with Adrian's actual killing. The recording proved fired the shot and Gideon delivered the fatal air. Her lawyers argued coercion. They showed the bruise on her face, the threats from Gideon, and the transfer documents proving he planned to sacrifice her. They described her as a trapped woman who made terrible choices beneath the control of violent men. Every word contained a piece of truth. That was why it was effective. The prosecutor called me on the 9th day. I about the marriage, the sedative, the gun, the staged evidence, and the hidden recording. Watched me from the defense table without looking away. Her attorney approached. "Mr. Cole, did my client save your life by preventing Adrian from shooting you? She drugged me and delivered me to him, but she interfered with his original plan. She replaced it with another. Did she later help stop Phoenix? Yes. Did she give you the second ledger? Yes. Did she put herself in danger to protect you? Yes." The attorney paused, satisfied that the answers sounded like mercy. "Then it is possible Mrs. Cole regretted what she had done. It is possible, yet you refuse to forgive her. That is not a legal question. It speaks to your bias." I looked at the jury. Forgiveness does not alter evidence. The courtroom became quiet. The defense offered a path to testify. She declined. For weeks, the public waited for her confession. Reporters wanted tears, explanations, childhood wounds, and a sentence that could be placed above her photograph. She gave them nothing. On the final morning, before the verdict, she asked to speak with me in a secure room. 2 guards remained outside. She wore a gray suit and no wedding ring. "I could have," she said. "I know. My lawyers wanted me to say Gideon controlled me from the beginning." "Did he?" "Sometimes. That is not the same as always." "No." She placed a sealed envelope on the table. "They will call this a confession after I am sentenced." "Is it?" "No. It is the location of the last Bellwether account, and the names Adrian kept away from Gideon." "Why give it to me?" "Because you will verify it before trusting anyone." "I did not touch the envelope." "What do you want?" "Nothing you can give." "Then why ask for this meeting?" She breathed slowly. "To say one true thing before strangers decide what I am." I waited. "I loved the safety of you," she said. "I loved that you never needed to humiliate anyone to be strong. Then I mistook that safety for weakness because Adrian and Gideon taught me power should feel dangerous. They did not teach you to choose." "No. Did you know Adrian would die when you brought me upstairs?" "I knew he might. Did you know I might die?" "Yes." The word stayed between us. No excuse followed. That was her confession, not the document journalists wanted, not a speech asking to be understood. One word that accepted the shape of her choice. The jury found her guilty on every count, except direct participation in the killing. She received 32 years. As guards led her away, she turned once. I did not nod. I did not look away. Received life after admitting to 5 murders, including Julian and Grace. Dane received 24 years. The surviving Bellwether officials began trading one another for reduced sentences. Was promoted, then resigned 6 months later to lead an independent public corruption unit. Became the principal witness in the national inquiry. Recovered and used Grace's estate to fund legal support for. I returned to. The first morning back, I found sealed envelope still locked in my desk. I opened it. The account information was real. At the bottom of the final page she had written, "I know sorry is too small, so I will not insult you with it." There was no signature. For once, she had written something without trying to control the reader. A year after Adrian's murder, Vale Tower changed its name. The Orison logo came down at dawn. Workers removed the gold letters one at a time, while former employees gathered across the street to watch. The company itself did not survive. Its legitimate security divisions were sold. Its illegal data models were destroyed under court supervision. Billions in recovered assets went to victims whose lives had been reduced to profiles, predictions, and prices. Was offered the contract to oversee the destruction. I declined. Some doors should be closed by people who did not build them. Instead, I spent the year rebuilding our own systems. Samuel's Janus architecture became the foundation of a public evidence trust controlled by judges, journalists, engineers, and citizen auditors. No single owner, no invisible chairman, no quiet switch that could erase a crime. We named it Grace. At the launch, reporters asked whether it was created from revenge. No, I said. Revenge ends when the other person suffers. Accountability begins when the truth can no longer be privately owned. They asked about. I told them she was serving her sentence. They asked whether I still loved her. I did not answer. Love is not evidence. It can survive beside disgust, memory, grief, and judgment without excusing any of them. Months later, I visited her once. The prison meeting room had bolted tables and windows too narrow to show the horizon. Sat across from me in navy clothing, her hair shorter than before. You came, she said. Received another threat connected to a bellwether account. I told you everything. I believe you. That surprised her. Then why are you here? To tell you the threat was false. Someone wanted us to think the network was rebuilding. Who? A journalist trying to manufacture a story. She almost smiled. You traveled 3 hours to tell me that. I came because the investigation is finished. She understood what I meant. This was not the beginning of forgiveness. It was the end of unfinished business. Do you remember our apartment on Linden Street? She asked. Yes. We had one chair. You insisted the boxes were furniture. You cooked dinner on a camping stove. The gas had not been connected. She looked down at her hands. That part was real. Yes. Tears reached her eyes. This time they fell. I felt no triumph. Pain is not proof that justice has occurred. Sometimes it is only pain. I used to think your silence meant you were judging me, she said. Sometimes I was listening. And sometimes I had nothing kind to say. She nodded. Do you hate me? No. Do you forgive me? No. The answer did not require anger. She closed her eyes. I suppose that is fair. Fairness is not the same as consequence. When the guard called time stood. I waited. Thank you for not becoming them. I left without responding. Outside, rain had begun. The same cold rain that fell the night officers found me in my garage with Adrian's blood on my cuff. For a long time, I had believed the story began with that call at 2:17 in the morning. It did not. It began years earlier. Each time someone chose convenience over truth and believed the choice was too small to matter. Gideon chose control. Adrian chose leverage. Chose payment. Dane chose protection. Chose survival until survival became the excuse for everything. My own mistake was believing patience alone was virtue. Patience can reveal a trap. It can expose a liar. It can allow frightened people to show where they will run when the exit's close. But patience without responsibility becomes permission. Grace died while I waited for certainty. I carry that truth with me, not as punishment, as instruction. At the old biometric safe remained beneath my workbench. The police returned the gun after the trial, sealed in an evidence box. I never opened it. I placed the box inside the safe beside my wedding ring, Adrian's letter, and the broken watch that had transmitted Gideon's confession. Then I closed the door. A locked room does not protect the man who possesses the key. It protects the choice of what must never be released again. I turned off the garage light and walked into the rain. Behind me were the artifacts of betrayal. Ahead was no victory, no perfect recovery, and no clean version of the past. Only the freedom that remains when the truth has survived everyone who tried to kill it. They framed me because they mistook calm for surrender. They murdered because they mistook secrecy for power. They failed because every lie leaves architecture. And I had spent my life learning how to read the walls. The Grace Trust's first case involved a schoolteacher whose identity had been marked by an Orison model as a fraud risk. She had lost her mortgage, her insurance, and eventually her job, because an algorithm confused her with a woman who shared her birth date. No one had intended to destroy her life. That was the defense offered by every institution involved. The system had done it, as though a system were weather. We reconstructed the chain of decisions, restored her records, and forced the companies to admit that human beings had chosen every threshold, every shortcut, and every refusal to review the result. She sent me a handwritten note afterward. "Thank you for making them say my name." I kept that note on my desk instead of newspaper articles about Gideon, Adrian, or the trial. It reminded me that exposing a murderer was only one form of justice. The harder work began after the cameras left, when damaged lives still needed to be returned to the people living them. That was the work I chose.
You fed me lies with poison lips. I bled from every sinking ship, but now I rise with sharpened grace. You'll see the venom in my face. You broke my wings, I grew my claws. Now hear the wrath behind my cause. I've got a venom heart, tearing your world apart. You built your throne on hollow truth. Now feel the fire of my youth. No more tears, no more regret. I'm the storm you won't forget. You played the game, you pulled the strings, but I'm the chaos fate now brings. I won't be silent, won't be tamed. You'll scream before you say my name.